Hello and welcome to Planet Zoo. With the launch of the Planet Zoo Console Edition, I figured creating a quick start guide is a good idea to help out all of the new players joining the Planet Zoo community. Starting off in the game, I know it can seem a bit daunting at first with so much information to remember, so I've created this quick start series of videos as a guide for the essentials. In this video, I'll be taking you through the gameplay for starting your first zoo, tackling the common issues many new players might struggle with. To run through the gameplay essentials, I've opened up a new challenge zoo here, and I'll use this to show you how to develop a new zoo from scratch. As you can see, we're starting with a blank slate, so nothing within the zoo. We've got 40,000 in cash and 300 credits. I say blank slate, but the game does start you off with an entrance already built, so we don't need to worry about that. Guests will navigate into the zoo from here, appearing from these spawn points at the back. You can delete this entrance and recreate your own if you're so inclined, but money is so constrained at start that's not a good idea. Right, first steps, we need to expand the path coming out from the entrance here. Pathing can be a bit fiddly in Planet Zoo, and it does take some getting used to. Couple of options for paths, but I tend to stick with the asphalt. Angle snap, this lets you control the path turns so it snaps in place at specific angles. If you were looking to build on a grid, this is certainly a good idea. Path length, this extends the path length out by a number of meters, and with that you can extend this out and create longer paths. Now, width. This is the important feature here. As the zoo develops and visitor numbers increase, the way guests flow into the zoo, it creates blockages where you can end up with hundreds of people bunched up at points and struggling to get through. This is a big problem later in the game, so I plan ahead and always go with the biggest width from the outset. So yeah, I'll get this on an angle snap and then get some big pathing in here. This is all we'll need for now. Never ever build more than you need to at the start. Money is extremely tight, so every penny counts. Our next step is getting in the staff facilities. There's 7 buildings available right now. More do become available later. Well, the same buildings but just larger, but you have to research to get those, so right now we just need 1 each of these. I'll be placing these as close to the entrance as I can because one of the gameplay elements is managing power through the zoo, and conveniently the game starts you off with a free power supply at the entrance. So I'm going to make use of this and set the staff buildings up within the existing energy sphere, so I don't need to worry about paying for that just yet. So here we go, all 7 of those essential buildings are now set up, and if you look at the cash down at the bottom of the screen, you can see that has wiped out almost half of my available funds there. So yeah, you do really have to be careful at the start of the game not to overspend on anything frivolous. Next step is decorating these facilities. These are blank shells of construction drywall, and being such a penny pincher at the start, if I had a choice I wouldn't even bother dressing them up. But the staff will complain about it, and I'm not sure how much of a negative effect that has on their happiness, but I don't like to chance it. So using the construction build pieces, I developed these buildings into a staff block. Nothing too fancy, but just making it look like a proper building. Here's the completed staff block, just a basic walls and floor job. I have added signage that denotes what's within each section. That helps to know where everything is without having to look inside. I use this setup for pretty much every new zoo at start, and it houses all the required buildings. As the game progresses and I need more buildings, I create a condensed version of this because you don't need duplicates of some of the buildings like the quarantine, but you will need a lot more of some of them like the keeper facility and the staff room. Next step is adding the staff path to this building that connects with the main path. There's different types of path in the game, and each has different functions. The staff path is a path that only staff can use. This is necessary because staff buildings have an area of negative influence around them that impacts visitors' happiness. It's a bit of a silly game mechanic if you ask me. I don't see why a guest walking nearby, say, a keeper food preparation building would be viewed negatively, but it is, so we have to be mindful to keep visitors away from these buildings, and a good way to do that is by using a path that they can't use. There is one exception to this rule. If you have low animal welfare and end up with protesters in your zoo, then protesters will use the closest path they can take to whatever animal they're upset about, even if it's a staff path. So you get a double whammy there for zoo reputation, protesters, and negative influence from the staff facilities. Staff facilities all connected up now. Now we need to add some staff. At this early stage, we want to keep our staff costs down, so I only want to hire the required employees. A caretaker, keeper, mechanic and vet is essential. The security guard, with only a very small zoo, I don't think it's essential at this stage to have one. But the game disagrees, and if you don't hire one, it will constantly alert you through a warning notification that you haven't got one. So simply to avoid the annoyance of that notification popping up constantly, I hire a security guard as well, even though they've got nothing to do. I'm not hiring a vendor or an educator yet. We don't have any visitor facilities established for the vendor, and having an educator isn't necessary yet either, so I don't need the cost of them, I just leave them out for now. Next step is setting up a work zone and linking the employees we've just hired to operate within that zone. Work zones is a feature in Planet Zoo where you designate specific buildings and employees into a zone, so they will only carry out tasks that arise from within that work zone, which helps keeping your zoo efficient. Whilst it's not essential early game, setting up the work zones from the beginning is easier before things get out of control. To do this, I need to select new work zone, and that automatically takes me to this grayed out overlay, which is the work zone heat map. From here, I can add all of these staff buildings that we've just added to the zoo so that they're now operating from within the work zone. This turns them from red to green to show that they're now part of this work zone. Confirming that, I'm now back on the work zone screen, and from here I can change the status of all of my staff here from no work zone to work zone 1. An easy way to check that the employees are working as intended, you can click on a staff member, go over to the briefcase icon, and down at the bottom there, confirmed as employed in work zone 1. We've got our work building set up, we've hired staff, it's finally time to get some animals in. Before diving into the animal market, I recommend looking up information on the animal that you have in mind in the game Zoopedia. You get to the Zoopedia from the tab in the bottom left, and this provides you key information on the animals and what to look out for when you're ready to buy. I'll use the aardvark as an example here of what you might want to find out. In the Species Data tab, this tells you the social statistics, including how many animals you can have in a group. For the aardvark here, it's just 2 together, male and a female, so I can't have any more than that in a single habitat, otherwise they'll start fighting. Further down this page, it tells me the life expectancy and age of sexual maturity. Now, trading animals in Planet Zoo, you can only purchase adults, you can't buy or sell juveniles, so it's more favourable to buy animals that are newly matured, since that'll give you the longest breeding window with them. So the information on this page, I'm now equipped with the knowledge that I should be looking in the trade market for 2 aardvarks, and the closer they are to 2 years old, the better. So, now we go and find some aardvarks. To access the trade market, you select the Animals tab at the bottom here and head on to the animal market. And here we go, 3 aardvarks available. Just 1 female, so that's my only choice. When there is a choice, a deciding factor will be their age, but also the genetics and breeding stats over on this side. Ideally, you want all of these 4 stats to be green. That means they're good for breeding healthy offspring. Adabola here is looking rather average with her stats there, but since she's the only female aardvark available, we'll be taking her anyway. For the males, Adajola has poor longevity, but his other stats are quite good, and the fertility there is 100%. You can't get better than that. Akinlana, on the other hand, although he's younger, the stats are worse, so I think I'll be taking Adajola. So yeah, let's purchase them. So that means he's now gone to my trade centre. And of course, we still need to purchase the female here, so Adabola, we're going to buy you. So that's both aardvarks now will show up in my trade centre and be ready to send to the zoo. Let's take a look and make sure they got there okay. To do this, I need to go into the Overview tab and select the Animals tab. There it is, and on the Animals screen, there they are, our 2 aardvarks waiting to go into the zoo. Before we put the aardvarks in, we obviously need to build them a home, so it's time to build a habitat. First step for building a functional and efficient habitat, I'm back on the Zoopedia to look up some key information about the aardvarks that will influence how I build the enclosure. Back on the habitat page, I now know there's 2 aardvarks, so I can key those stats into the requirements table, and that now tells me what the minimum requirements are. So it must be at least 390 meters squared, no climbing or water requirements, and they need at least a grade 2 barrier, and it needs to be half a meter tall to avoid any escapes. On the social tab, also noting again with the aardvarks, they are shy, so that means I need to add screens into the enclosure so they don't have a sight line to guess, otherwise they will get stressed, which reduces their welfare. So with everything we know about aardvarks now, we're finally ready to actually build the enclosure. The first stage of this is building the barrier. So click on the barrier tab, and this changes our icon here into the first post of the barrier that we'll be creating. Over in the menu, we get to select what type of barrier we want to use. We already know from the Zoopedia information that we need at least a grade 2 barrier for the aardvarks. And selecting each barrier here will tell you a host of information about the barrier, including what grade strength it is. However, even before starting the barrier wall, I find it's a good idea to put in the gate first. You don't have to do it this way, you can start the wall first. I just prefer putting the gate in because it keeps it at the same angle as the pathing is on the grid, and I have more flexibility of choosing where the gate's going to go. A few different options for the gates here, but considering the aardvark doesn't need a tall wall, it can get away with a short gate, I'm going to use that one. So place the gate down, and it automatically continues the barrier on with a normal barrier fence. I want to keep this in a straight line with the gate, so I'm going to check the option to have this at an angle snap. I'm also going to change the barrier from a wooden barrier to a null barrier. The null barrier is an invisible barrier that denotes the edge of the habitat, but being no actual wall here, I have to make sure I build a wall myself within the inner edge of the barrier line to stop the aardvarks escaping. You don't have to do this step at all, and could use a normal barrier wall instead of the null barrier. The reason I make habitat walls this way is because build pieces in the game are static and they don't degrade. Barrier walls do degrade and require regular maintenance by the mechanic to prevent them falling apart. It's a slightly cheaty method to lessen the workload for your mechanics, meaning you don't have to employ as many of them if you're willing to take the time to create your own barriers for the enclosures. However, I appreciate this as a guide for beginner players, and if this step is too complex at this stage, then just using the solid barriers until you're more comfortable with the building tools doesn't lessen the efficiency by much. I just really like to optimize my habitats to operate at maximum efficiency, and I thought it was worth sharing this method and the reason why I do this, in case it's something you wanted to take on at some point. Anyway, I'm almost finished the loop here, finishing off the wall here and changing that last little bit of fence back into a null barrier. And that completes the barrier wall building and shows us the full space within the enclosure that we'll be working with. To check the size of this enclosure meets the animal's space requirements, I need to select the gate again, and that'll bring up the enclosure's stats. And let's see, which tab is it under? Second tab, that shows us the dimensions. So this is 480 meters squared, which is about 90 meters more than the aardvark's minimum requirement. You always want to make sure that the space is a little above the minimum of what the animals need, because once you start placing stuff inside the habitat, that takes up a little extra room, and this is subtracted from what the game calculates as the animal's navigable area, so you can end up having to go back and redo all this, stretch out a little bit to give them more room. And that's never fun when you think you've finished the build, you put the animals in, and they're like, no, you've not got enough room here, mate, so you have to go back and stretch it out. Leave a little extra room at the beginning and it's a bit easier. Okay, so now we've done the outline, we need to go back and create our own custom habitat wall here so that the aardvarks can't escape. For this, I'm going to be using the construction build pieces. Specifically, I'm looking for some kind of wall. There's a lot of theming pieces within the construction tab at the moment that we haven't unlocked because we haven't had the mechanic doing any research so far. When you start a new game, some of the pieces are locked behind themes and you have to have your mechanic do research for themes, and then they slowly start unlocking as you progress in the game. So we are a little limited here at the moment. But I do enjoy the challenge as well, making something look good when you've only got very minimal base game pieces. With such limitations, I've decided to go with a mud wall here and just getting a hang on how to move those pieces in the console version of Planet Zoo. There's a few subtle differences even using a keyboard and mouse on console, and that will naturally take a little while to get used to. What's key with making a custom barrier is making sure the pieces are within that blue line. So making sure it's within the habitat, otherwise if it's even touching a little bit on the outside, the game can see that as an escape point. So being really careful here, taking my time and making sure that everything is within the blue line. With the sides done, I've moved on to the front of the enclosure where guests will be viewing the aardvarks from the guest path. This needs a different approach. Because the aardvarks are a shy animal, they can't have a sightline to guests or it will stress them out too much. To avoid this, I'm placing a one-way barrier across the front. So with this, the guests will be able to see into the enclosure, but from the other side it's darkened so the aardvarks can't see out. Whilst the side walls are about 1 metre high, for the front I've had to increase this back to about a 2 metre panel to ensure the guests are completely blocked from the aardvarks' view. A shorter glass panel and they'd still be complaining that they can see the guests. Using the custom barrier for this approach, this is also a vaguely cheaty tactic I'm using for the glass construction. If I was building this with a normal barrier, the one-way glass panels are locked behind mechanic research, but the freeform build piece one-way glass panels aren't. So I'm using something that for the easier version is locked behind a research wall, but the way I'm doing it, it's not. This is the finished custom barrier. I've added some wooden beam detail around the glass panels. That's just to make it look a little better than being floating glass with no supports. Gameplay wise, the guests nor the animals will care about me adding these details. That's just for my benefit. Next step, I need to connect this to the staff path. So just adding a little more path there. Then we need to finally add the aardvarks into the enclosure before customizing the inside to meet their requirements. To bring the aardvarks in, we go into the Animal tab, select the Animal Management screen, and take both of the aardvarks here. Then on the right hand side, check the Move button, and then select the inside of the habitat. That's now scheduled the animals for delivery, and that's certainly got the vet and the caretaker moving quickly into the trade centre to collect them. Doing it at lightning speed. Must have been sick of having nothing to do until now. They'll make their way around now to the habitat gate and drop the animal boxes in there, which will explode, and we get brand new aardvarks. Animals are finally in. Noting this has triggered a couple of things. Notification there telling me that an inspector will be visiting in 12 months. That'll be happening continuously now, where they'll be keeping tabs on animal welfare. It's also saying habitat has no keepers, and that's because I've forgotten to assign this habitat to the work zone we set up before. With the staff being assigned to that work zone, they will only do welfare tasks assigned within that zone, so I need to go back and add the habitat to it too. Aardvarks are now in, but they're not very happy right now. Selecting an aardvark will bring up their info tab, and this will guide us in what needs changing to meet their requirements. First thing I can see here, I need to build them a hard shelter. The terrain also needs more variety, so let's figure that out now. Using the paint tool in the terrain editor, I can get rid of all this long grass, and that's already helping a lot. Next, they need a bit more soil. And as you can see here, everything has gone green for the terrain colours, so that's been fixed now. Onto the hard shelter. An easy fix for putting in a hard shelter is using the Frontier blueprints that come preloaded in the game. These are fine to use, but I'd prefer for this one to make my own hard shelter to fit in with the custom barrier design. I'll figure that out and cut back with a hard shelter in here. This is the design I've come up with, so using more of that mud wall panel, a glass front and a log panel roof. Aardvark seem perfectly happy with this, and it improved their hard shelter bar to 100%. I'm happy with it because it fits in with the custom barrier. Next step for completing the habitat. Now, the aardvarks don't have a coverage requirement. That's where some animals will need a certain amount of plants and nature in their environment to be happy. The aardvarks here are apparently okay without anything, but they can tolerate a few plants, so I'd like to put a few in so it doesn't look quite so bare. The rule with this is that they must be plants that are appropriate for the aardvark, so in this case African plants from a tropical or a grassland biome. If I was to put a plant in from another biome, that would upset the animals. And apparently all the guests are botanists because they also get very upset if you put a plant in that they're not compatible with. Next step is dealing with food and enrichment. Enrichment is a big fat zero right now. You unlock enrichment by research, and starting out, we haven't done any research. So the aardvarks are unfortunately the pioneers suffering through our vet current ineptitude, so it's a priority to get them researching quickly. Something also left to do is sorting out feeding stations, water access, bedding and heating. Filtering habitat items per species, this gives me a list of everything that the aardvark can use and that's currently available to us. First to go in, before I forget, because I often do forget this, aardvarks live in a hot climate and will need heaters. Although it's 26 degrees right now, that won't be the case for long, and as soon as the temperature dips, their welfare will drop. So I'm adding a number of heaters around the habitat now to warm them up in the future. Next we need a food bowl, and finally we need some water. You can use bowls for water, but the better alternative is the water pipe. It's a little more expensive, but it's the only water source that can't run out. The keepers don't have to fill it up, so if they're being a bit slow, the animals still can't die of dehydration. Next we need a few beds. I don't believe not having bedding has any negative effects, but I still like to add it inside hard shelters so that I know the animals are going to sleep in an optimum area of the habitat so the guests can still see them. With bedding in, that's all habitat requirements fulfilled, aside from the enrichment issue, so let's sort that now. To do this, I need to open up the research tab on the management screen, and if I select our vet here, Rhonda, and click her onto the aardvark, that means Rhonda is now going to be researching the aardvarks when she's not performing other higher priority tasks. In time, that will start to unlock enrichment toys and feeding stations for the aardvarks, which will improve their welfare. Now that we've got our first animals in, we're starting to see our first visitors coming through the gate, providing us with a much needed cash injection as they pass through the ticket barrier. It's time to add some essentials that will improve the visitor reputation. First off, we need to look at education. We can add educational media to teach visitors about the aardvarks, starting with a habitat education stand. So let's put this in front of the habitat, and we'll need to select the aardvark on the information tab, and there we go, visual information for visitors about aardvarks. Next I'll add a few education speakers, and this will relay a recorded talk about aardvarks. One can go either side of the sign. Placing this automatically brings up the education heat map, but they're not active currently, so we're not seeing any information on them. Like the board, we need to select the content and change this to aardvark. And now when we go into the education heat map, that lets us know the sphere of influence of the speakers. So when visitors pass through this, they'll automatically get an improvement in their education, whether they're actively listening or not. Another pretty important item for visitors at this stage, I need to add donation bins. Early game, we're super reliant on big donations to remain profitable. So let's get a couple of donation bins next to the aardvarks. Something I wanted to check now that we've got visitors in, whether the screen was working to avoid the aardvarks getting stressed. It's good to see that that one-way glass screen appears to be working well. The visitors aren't having any impact on the aardvarks and their stress levels remain low. Aha, vet research is complete. Let's check this out. So here our vet has unlocked the first piece of research for the aardvarks. We will have unlocked something for that. Let's check on the research tab in the Zoopedia. And there we go. We've got a new dietary option, live termites. And checking in the habitat, indeed, that's unlocked a brand new enrichment item, the large barrel feeder. So I can now add this to the aardvark's habitat, and that'll go towards improving their overall enrichment score. Now that we're well on our way to establishing everything we need for a starter zoo, it's worth taking a quick look at the finances. So cash flow is negative, but that's accounting for the initial outlay of all the infrastructure, so not something I'm worried about there. Taking a look in the finances overview, income is positive, but that's because we're getting a steady supply of visitors through initially and wages etc. haven't gone out yet. If we take a look at the income, ticket sales are minimal, but we simply can't justify upping ticket prices with just one mid-appeal species in the zoo. But look at donations, already double the ticket income, hence why it is so important early game to get those donation boxes up and running. To protect us from negative cash flow once wages and bills start coming through, it's essential to get another species into the zoo with a good appeal rating. A solid choice for this is adding an exhibit animal. Exhibit animals cost much less to manage and require minimal maintenance, so they're great to add early as a protective buffer for your finances. So for this, I need to add a small exhibit box and then connect this up with the main path. Then time to find the species. So let's view the exhibit market. I'm going to filter in here as we specifically want a species with a high appeal rating. Higher appeal species will attract more visitors to the zoo, so I can filter here and set a minimum appeal rating. This is too much and it's showing me there's no species with an appeal rating this high, so we drop this down again until a few show up. There we go, got some back. So boa constrictors have got the highest rating here, but there's only 2 females available and obviously they won't be breeding. Next highest is the Brazilian salmon pink tarantula, and there is 2 of those available that will breed, so let's pick those up. Then we request exhibit animal. That takes us to the exhibit storage and we can select our spiders and place them in the box. Although there isn't a lot of management you need to do to take care of the exhibit animals, we do need to initially set up the right environment with the box. First off, in the layout, the spiders do have enrichment options, and just like the habitat animals, we need the vet to conduct research here to unlock those options. So there's nothing we can do with this currently, and we'll again have to set the vet to research to unlock those options. The next tab is the temperature and humidity. We normally need to manually adjust the default temperatures and humidity setting, but for once the default is actually the right range for the spider's preferences, so we don't need to change anything with this. The staff tab, I don't need to do anything with this, but it is a reminder here for me that I haven't set this box up within any work zone. So just like with the aardvark habitat, I now need to go back into the work zone overlay and adjust this box to work zone 1. The management tab, exhibit species tend to reproduce a lot, so I want to set this slider to active so I'm able to manage the population automatically. This means the game will automatically sort the species, so I don't have to keep managing this manually to remove extra spiders. I can set this so there's only ever 1 of each of them in the box, and any additional spiders produced will be sold off for cash, which also helps towards maintaining profit for the zoo. So the spider box here is now essentially a cash generating pet shop. Like with the aardvark habitat, we can add some educational items to boost the visitor education rating, so adding an exhibit information board and setting this to the spider, and I can also copy this speaker and set it to talk about spiders too. Now, this is an important point about audio educational items. The audio sphere here, see how it's overlapping with the other one? That's bad. You can't let the speakers overlap, as that will create a negative effect for any visitors standing in the overlap. So we need to bring this over to the other side so that there's no crossover. Now is actually probably a good time to check out our power situation. As I mentioned earlier, we get a free power source to start off with from the zoo entrance. Anything requiring electricity needs to sit within an electricity sphere, either the free one we get from the start, or once the zoo expands further, you can add additional power sources from the utilities tab. Let's check ours now on the electricity heat map. All good still, everything is sitting within the blue circle, so that means everything is getting powered properly. Heat maps are a really useful tool for quick assessments of negative effects across the zoo, so we'll take a tour of all the other heat maps and I'll explain what they do. Animal welfare, this will highlight if any animals are currently suffering low welfare. Our aardvarks are in the green, so their welfare is good. The breeding tab, this will show animal fertility, so our aardvarks are both blue, meaning they're fertile and will actively breed when in season. The habitat heat map, this has a number of different views. For this to work, you have to indicate what habitat you want some information on. So I need to click one of the animals within the habitat, then go back into the heat map for it to work. So now it's showing me the animal's traversable area. The blue is all the areas they're able to navigate. The white spot is where they won't be able to reach. Hence why it's always a good idea to make your habitats a little larger than the minimum required, as the non-navigable white areas will eat into the available space once you've built up your habitat. Also important here is the staff traversable area. You can see here the doorway into the hard shelter I've built is too small for the staff to get inside here. But for a shelter this small, that's not a problem. They can still clean in here, just vacuuming waste from the outside, and it'll magically morph through the walls. The temperature heat map, it's not that useful right now because the outside temperature here is quite warm. But in colder biomes, or when the weather gets cold here, this will show me any spots in the habitat that are too cold for the animal's ambient temperature, and that will indicate where I need to put heaters or coolers. The water heat map, again, not useful currently because we don't have any bodies of water in the zoo yet, but when we do, this will indicate if there's any water that doesn't have adequate filtration to clean out waste. The buildings tab will let you see where you've placed specific buildings, so it's useful if you want to see if you're spacing out staff and guest facilities effectively. The negative impact heat map. An active gameplay mechanic in Planet Zoo is that staff facilities have a negative sphere of influence, whereby visitors will gain a negative drain on their happiness if they fall within the red sphere. Hence why we've positioned our staff buildings here away from where visitors can walk by them. Decorating buildings reduces the sphere, but it'll never go away altogether, which is why we've placed them over here. The security heat map will highlight instances of crime, so any vandalised structures will show up red. This isn't useful for us currently as there isn't any crime this early in the game, but later on this map will help you figure out where there's a lot of crime and whether you need to put security cameras or more security guards in a specific area. The education heat map, we've already gone through this one, so we'll move on. The visitor heat map, this filters against visitor needs, so things like overall happiness. All the guests are green right now, showing their needs are met. But later on, as the zoo progresses, it's helpful to understand where we might be lacking visitor amenities, so food and water points, toilets and whatnot. Staff happiness heat map, this will highlight staff and let me know if any of them are displeased with their working environment or conditions. Oh, we do have an amber member of staff there. Let's see what's up with them. It's the mechanic. So if I select the mechanic, I can figure out what's up with that. His thoughts are that everything is apparently okay. This indicates that he's basically bored and doesn't have anything to do. That makes sense because at this point there isn't anything that needs fixing just yet, so he has nothing to do. I have set the mechanic to start researching though, so that should keep him busy, and that should change his status from amber to green once he starts getting to work with that research. That's all of the essential heat maps, and since we've got all of the habitat stuff up and running, what's left to run through? Since we're now getting a steady flow of guests through the zoo, I need to start adding some guest facilities, so places to buy food and drinks, the ATM, information point, and a gift shop. In the facilities tab, I can check through the guest facilities and add everything that's needed from here. Let me set that up and we'll jump back when it's done. This is the basic guest setup with everything they'll need. Like the staff buildings, I do need to decorate these a little, so I'll create a basic envelope for them and jump back with that. So basic shell now covering the guest facilities. It's a bit rough and ready. In a more creative build, I could make this look a lot nicer. However, it is functional. When I unpause the game, the facilities will automatically open and the shops are auto-populated with vendors, so I don't need to hire them. It's a good idea to hire a few additional vendors though to cover the shops when these guys go on a break. Now that we have guest facilities, another aspect of gameplay comes into play, litter and fatigue. So I need to add bins and benches. Otherwise visitors will start dropping litter everywhere and that will negatively affect guest happiness. I'm adding plenty of bins. You can never have enough bins. And for benches, there being only 2 habitats set up, guests won't tire from walking yet, so I don't need general path benches yet. but visitors purchasing food and drink will replenish energy from sitting at a picnic bench, so I'll add a couple of those on the off chance some of them sit down. I'm adding these to the main path because the pathway ends here and they're not going to get in the way right now, but as the zoo expands, these will definitely need moving to a side area so as not to block the main path. With that put in, that's everything I can think of that you need to know to make a quick start to get up and running and establish your first zoo. For additional support, I'm already working on developing starter habitat blueprints for all of the animals in the game, which will cover the animals' basic habitat needs. I've created a whole suite of these for the PC version of the game, and players have told me they do find them useful for quickly setting up new zoos, so I figured redoing all of them for the console version would be a good idea too. Keep an eye out on the Frontier Workshop for those, and they should start popping up in there soon. I've also uploaded another tutorial video explaining everything about the user interface and talked through all of the various overlays and tabs and what they do, so I'd recommend checking that out too.